Okay, so as you might know, Laura has asked me to do tonight's webinar. So we're going to be talking about tea. You might know me through Laura as her tea dealer. So I'm her supplier of matcha and various other teas. And I do various tea events and stuff like that. But what we're going to look at tonight is we're going to look at, I'm going to show you a cold brew tea that I like to do, which is a sparkling jasmine. And that makes a great Prosecco or champagne alternative. It's got the fizz, it's got the dryness. So I'm just going to show you a little how we make that. It's really, really simple. And we'll talk a little bit more about cold tea brewing as well. I know for a lot of people in the group, it's about finding something that you can drink with a meal and that you can also just enjoy sipping on. And so hopefully some of these suggestions tonight will aid you in that. Ah, good. I see people are starting to appear now. If you have comments or questions during the webinar, please just stick them in the comments box. I understand that things can take a little while to kind of catch up with itself, so leave them there. I will, if I can say something about them quickly, I will. Otherwise, I'll come back to them at the end of the session, and I can also message you directly. So I'm on the group, so you can just send me a direct message and we can chat, or we'll take it from there. We're also going to look at matcha. So you'll know about matcha through Laura probably, and it's a great drink. It's a great thing to have. It's a great alternative to coffee, really gives you a boost. And FYI, if you have too much of it, it can make you a little bit trippy. In a really good way. So, but I mean, seriously, you have to have a lot of it. It's not going to happen from a bowl or two a day. We're talking as 7, 10, 12 bowls a day. That will give you a little bit of a buzz. So I'll just quickly run through matcha and how to make it, the do's and don'ts, and some key points about what to look for when you're buying matcha. Of course, you can get matcha from me. You can get any of the teas we're talking about today. You can buy them through me. So I run a little tea club. So if you're interested in that, just pop it in there. And at the end of the session, I'm going to put some links up so that you can check in through that later. I won't put them up now because I don't want to distract us while we're going through the session. Okie dokie. And then I'll just talk about some other key points and tips and things to be aware of in general when you're making tea. So we'll have a look at that, and that'll just help your general tea brewing a bit better. So here we go. This is my sparkling jasmine cold brew. So what I've done is I've made a little Prosecco champagne alternative, and it's got, let's see if we can get something dark behind that. You'll see it's got nice bubbles rising, so it gives you that sparkly fizz like a champagne. It's lovely and fizzy. It's got a dryness, it's got a fruitiness, and it's got this lovely jasmine aroma. And this is a great one that we used to do for events. Pop a raspberry in, it makes a nice little treat. So, how do we make a sparkling jasmine tea? Bear with me and I will show you. So what you're going to need is a bottle of sparkling water. Now I use the Tesco Ashbeck because it's very neutral, and in general if you're doing a cold brew you want a neutral water. So if you're doing a still cold brew, which we'll talk about in a second, then use Ashbeck still. Or you can use the fizzy one for making a sparkling. Don't use things like Evian, very, very high mineral content, and it gives the tea a really strange flavour. So just be aware, you want something very neutral, or just use filtered tap water, which is absolutely fine. So if you're making a sparkling cold brew, it produces a lot of gas when it's brewing in the fridge. So what you want to do is take out the first inch or so of liquid. So I'm just going to dispose of it this way. So we've reduced the liquid in there a little bit, and that will mean when you're brewing your tea, it's not going to produce too much gas and explode when you take the lid off later. Then what we want is we want some jasmine. So jasmine is the best for making a champagne. We've tried various other teas with sparkling water and they don't quite give the same effect, whereas the jasmine has something really special. Now if you're using jasmine pearls, you're going to want just over a teaspoon of tea. Hi Kim, just over a teaspoon of tea per 400 mils of water. So this is a 500 ml bottle. Do the same kind of thing. Just pop the leaves directly into the bottle. So you can see it's already starting to go bonkers. Close it up, and now it's really simple. Just stick that in the fridge for a minimum of 3 hours, and then that starts to infuse. When the 3 hours are up, open it. You can leave it for longer. In the sparkling, it doesn't really matter. When you open it, be very careful. Open it slowly. It can tend to shoot off like a champagne cork, so you just want to be careful of that. And then just simply, so what I do is I either use a strainer into a glass, because you can see the leaves are still in here, and those jasmine pearls have opened up. You can see how they've unfurled while they've been steeping. So you want to let those open, and they infuse slowly, and then just strain it through into a glass, or strain it into a decanter or a jug or something, and then pour out glasses of it. And it's a fantastic, really, really great champagne alternative. So that's lesson one. Going on from that, let's have a little talk about cold brew tea in general. So cold brew is using the same principles that we've just talked about. You use approximately a teaspoon of dry leaf to 400 mils of water. Simply put the leaf in the water, stick it in the fridge for at least 3 hours. So somewhere between 3 to 6 hours for most teas. We're talking green teas, white teas, oolong teas. Black tea doesn't brew so well this way. If you want a cold black tea, better to make it hot and then fridge it. But the cold brew is a fantastic technique. If you like tea and you like the flavors, you get a really flavorful, cold, refreshing drink, which has got a lot of different characters to it. So you can really enjoy drinking it. It's not acidic, it's not overly sweet, it's sugar-free, calorie-free. What more do you want, really? I do it all the time in summer. You can buy special jugs that have a filter inside, or just do it in a bottle, do it in a jug. Just stick the leaves in there and then decant afterwards. The key thing to remember though is once it's reached after the 3 to 6 hours, once it's reached that point where the flavors are really good, remove the leaves. If you leave the leaves in, they'll keep getting stronger and more bitter, and then you'll start to want to add sweetness to it, which kind of defeats some of the purpose, and you lose some of the lovely flavors. So take out the leaves. Obviously, if it's a bottle with a strainer, you just take out the strainer. If you're doing it in a jug, then you could either scoop the leaves out or decant it through a sieve or strainer into another jug or bottle, and then it will keep for a few days in the fridge. I generally throw away the leaves after that. Some people do say you can reuse, but I think with over that cold, slow steeping, it's better just to chuck the leaves and start again. And honestly, the tea isn't that expensive, so what does it matter? If you have any questions about cold brew, remember, just ping me a line, drop me a message there. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at Tea with Kyle, and you can just send me a message there or through the group here, whatever works for you. You can also send it to the website kyle-whittington.com, where there's a place you can send messages there. But social media is just much the easier way to get in touch with me. Okie dokie. So let's move on to matcha. So we'll look at these two, and then we'll come back to tea in general and general brewing points for tea. So matcha, if you haven't come across it before, is a traditional tea from Japan. It's powdered green tea. It's very, very high quality. So it looks like this. and you can see how bright and vibrant that green is. And if you're buying matcha, that's something to look out for, is the vibrancy of the green. You want something that's really, really bright emerald green, and when you make it, you'll see how it goes a lovely deep emerald color with a frothy green foam on top, and that is the sign of quality. If it's yellowish, grayish, it's poor quality. You can stick it in a smoothie, doesn't matter, but if you want to drink it and actually enjoy the flavors and the taste of it, then you want to go for a good quality. So little plug, I of course sell this matcha, so you can get it through the website or send me a message. Most of my people like Laura and Kim, they buy, just send me an email, send me a text, and we'll sort it out. So now, a couple of tricks with the matcha. What you want to do is keep it in the fridge because that keeps it fresh. So matcha is very, very high grade leaf, and the stems have been removed and then it's been ground down, and it's as fresh as you can get, really. So keeping it cold will prolong the life and give you a bit of flavor. If you're buying in bulk, then freeze the majority of it and just decant small amounts as you need. When you decant, let it come up to temperature first so you don't get moisture inside the original packet. When you decant, the best thing I do is to sieve it and then store it in the fridge. So I use one of these, that's a Matcha Furui. So it has a little sieve, and this is the little doobly that you scrape it through, and that sits inside there, and then the whole thing goes in the fridge. It's airtight, and it's a great way to store it. Now, these are very difficult to get hold of in the UK, so bear with. I am going to source some, and they should be here at Christmas or just after. If you want, put your name on my list, let me know. But this is, if you're a matcha addict, then this is kind of an essential piece of kit. The other essential thing you're going to need if you're drinking matcha is a chasin. So this is a bamboo whisk. The best have 100 tines, so 100 of these, and they individually hand cut, and it's cut out of one piece of bamboo. So this is what gives you that frothy, foamy matcha. Now, there are a couple of ways to do it without this, but this is really the best way. And if you're going to commit to it, then get one of these. But yeah, let me know. So, making matcha, you're going to need a bowl. Yeah, let me just get a better position. So, you're going to need a bowl, and we use about a gram and a half of matcha. So I'm using a traditional bamboo scoop, and I measure out 2 scoops. You can also use a teaspoon, and it's about half a teaspoon. And then, so the powder goes into the bowl. You can use any bowl, a large teacup, a large mug for this. And then you need hot water at about 70 degrees. And then using the whisk, now there's several different ways to whisk this, and we can go into detail of that in a different session. There's also a blog post I'll send for you later if you need. So first thing, just gently maneuver the whisk through the matcha, and this is just to break up any lumps. So it's very light powder, so it does get lumpy when you put the water in. Once you've done that, the easiest way is going from 7 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and you flick. Obviously, you don't flick it out of the bowl, vigorous, but not too vigorous. The tines should just touch the bottom of the bowl. Don't press because you'll break it, but just gently stroking the bottom of the bowl. It's kind of like whisking shaving foam. And then whisk vigorously. So what you want to achieve, and you can see what's happening here in the bowl, is you're getting this nice green frothy foam on the top. So once that's frothed up really well, and you can see how the froth is building, and the color is that lovely vibrant green we're talking about. Look at that. Now that is good matcha. If you don't get that greenish color, that lovely vibrant, it's stronger than a mint green, it's kind of a leaf. If you're not getting that, then it's poor quality, and you're going to get the taste to go with it if it's poor quality. If it's good quality, you should get a smoothness on the tongue, well balanced. You are going to get lots of umami. So umami is that savory taste that you get in Japanese food, particularly soy sauce, that kind of thing. And umami is delicious. It can take a little bit of getting used to, but it really is nice. What the Japanese tend to do when you have matcha is you'll often have a little sweet first. So something quite sweet, and that coats the mouth with a sweetness. So then the matcha is more pleasant to drink. But as you get used to drinking matcha, you'll find that you get to enjoy that flavor. And again, if it's good, you get that lovely umami smoothness, a bit of green vegetable. It can sometimes taste almost chocolatey. Yeah, what's not to like? Hi, Deborah. So ideally, drink it as soon as possible after you've made it. If you leave it to sit, the particles will start to fall down through the water and they form a green sludge at the bottom, which is just really unpleasant to drink. So drink it quickly. It's like an espresso. You should just, drink it 3 sips ideally. Other ways you can use matcha, obviously sticking it in a smoothie is great. But really, I think what we're looking for here, what you guys are looking for, is something that you can enjoy the activity of drinking. So why stick it in a smoothie when you can enjoy the flavors? And hey, you get to collect stuff like tea bowls and teaware and buy cool things. So that always makes one happy. You can also, if you don't have a chasen, you can use a cocktail shaker. So either with hot or with cold water, you stick the matcha and the water in there. So the water you're using is like an espresso cup full. So it's about 70 ml. Don't overdo the water because you get a very thin, untasty beverage. And then shake it vigorously. You can do the same thing with a cocktail shaker, a bottle, a jar, a flask, whatever's to hand. You can also use a small hand whisk, balloon whisk, kitchen whisk, or one of those electric milk frother things. But really, the best way is with one of these that will always give you the creamiest, smoothest result. So worth investing in. Okie dokie, well, we're a good halfway through now, so I'm just going to move on to talk a little bit about tea in general. So tea, all tea comes from the same tea plant, green, white, black, oolong. They all come from the same plant. It's just how they're processed. Obviously, I'm going to cram what I would normally spend a couple of hours talking about into 15-20 minutes. So take it in, questions ask me, or come along to something, and there's plenty more to learn. But the basics, it's one plant, it's how the leaves are processed. The processing of the leaves after they've been picked affects the kind of tea you're going to get, the flavors you get, and as a result, how that tea needs to be brewed. So a tea that has been very heavily processed, like a black tea, it goes through a lot of different stages, and the leaf comes out very dry, very dark. That needs a very hot water to reinvigorate and bring the leaves back to life and release the flavors. So that's why when you're making a black tea, which you're probably most familiar with, you're using boiling water, because you need that heat to actually bring the leaves back to life, rehydrate them, and release the flavors. You're also going to need a decent steeping time, so generally 3 to 5 minutes. That's what we're used to. I'm an advocate for loose leaf tea. I don't drink tea bags. It's just, it tastes better and you get a better quality product. And really, it's not that expensive when you compare it to alcohol, for example. And if you're swapping something else into your drinking habits, tea is a fantastic alternative. You can get really involved and really geeky in the terroir, where it's grown, how it's picked, how it's processed. There's a whole kind of world there that you can explore and get excited about. And it's good for you, it's healthy, it invigorates, it makes you feel better. Green teas are very lightly processed teas, and they're very fresh leaves as a result. So you're going to need a lower temperature water. So I've talked here a couple of times about temperature. Temperature is a really key point if you're going to get into drinking quality teas. So the temperature of the water will dramatically affect the flavors that you get. Every tea has an ideal temperature range. We can say roughly teas sit in a certain range. Green teas, for example, sit in a range between 50 and 80 degrees. But within that, we've got a 30-degree difference. So it's a good thing to, when you're buying a tea, look for something that has instructions on the back, has the recommended temperature and the time. Or if you're buying it from a tea shop, then ask them for recommendations. I use a temperature control kettle. You can also boil the water, let it cool. Cutting the water with cold water is another option. It's not quite as effective and can easily go wrong. So invest in a temperature control kettle is the best way if you're going to get seriously into tea. What happens if you use the wrong temperature water? If you use water that's too hot, so for example, if you make a green tea with boiling water, you're going to get a bitter tea. Why does it go bitter? Because the leaves get burnt. It's very simple. You wouldn't wash lettuce with hot water, you wash it with cold water to keep it fresh. Tea is a similar kind of principle. You need to use the right temperature to get the best results out of what is basically a plant. If you use water that's too cool, so if you brew black tea with 70 degrees water, you're just not going to get any of the flavors. It's going to be very flat and tasteless. So water temperature is key. The other thing that's key is brewing time. So the amount of time you leave the leaves in there. And we touched on that when I was talking about cold brew. Take the leaves out once it's done. If you leave leaves sitting in there, they're going to stew. And when they stew, they get heavy and strong and bitter and unpleasant. And then you need to add gallons of milk and sugar or just throw it away. So those, if you're going to pay attention to anything, time and temperature are the two things to really look out for and really take into consideration when you're brewing teas. The other thing is how you brew the teas. So ideally a teapot with a removable strainer is the best, a strainer basket. You can also use, you can buy strainers that fit into a cup. So actually, let me get you a couple to show you, but bear with me a second. This is the little strainer basket that I'm talking about. So it's just a basket, it has a mesh. You can pop it into your cup, brew your tea, and then whip it out again. Really, really easy. The other thing that's great, this is a great piece of kit, Ingenuity. It has a valve on the bottom, so basically you put your tea in here, you water in here, you let it steep, and then afterwards you sit it on top of your cup. This valve releases because of the pressure of the cup, and the tea strains out. Both of these are great as well because you separate the leaf and the water, and then you have the leaves left afterwards. And for things like green teas, white teas, oolong, pu'er, you can reuse the leaves several times. So you're actually getting more out of each quantity of leaf. So out of a teaspoon of leaf, you could get 3 infusions. So it goes a long way. Each infusion will give you different flavors and they'll develop as you go. So it's worth, they're just little pieces of kit that you can get that are very simple to find, and they'll change your tea drinking habits and make better tea. One thing I advise against is the tea eggs. So those little, they look very cute, they come in funky kind of cute shapes sometimes, and there's a little egg with holes in the outside, or it's a house or a heart or a guy sticking his legs in your cup or whatever. Those, cute as they are, they're crap because they restrict the leaf and you don't have any space for the leaf to open and release all those lovely flavors. So really, the simplest and best thing is one of these. You can get them on Amazon. They're like £5 or something. Use them, rinse them out, stick them in the dishwasher. They go forever. I think this one is probably needing a good soak. It's about 5 years old. I mean, they last and last. and really they just make good tea. And you can use them in a cup, in a mug, in a teapot, whatever. It's really, really simple. So those are the basics. The time that you brew the leaves for and taking the leaves out afterwards, the temperature of the water you use, because this really affects the taste, and then the equipment that you use. So just a few simple things, something that you can control temperature with, a brewing basket, and you're done. It's really that simple. Loose leaf tea doesn't have to be a complicated, difficult process. It doesn't have to be messy. It's actually quite straightforward. And one of the great things that I love about loose leaf tea, and tea in general, whether it's my matcha, is taking those 5 minutes out of each day to actually stop, measure the leaves, brew the water, brew the tea, pour it out, and enjoy a cup of tea. So it's mindfulness. It's being aware of what you're drinking, being aware of where it's come from, being aware of how it should be treated. It's not just dunk a tea bag in a mug and off you go. Just a little bit of thought, and you can have a really, really enjoyable experience. And it's, you know, like opening a bottle of wine and sitting on the sofa and chilling and relaxing. Tea gives you the same thing, except without the hangover. So it's a great alternative if you're trying to cut back or change your drinking habits. It gives you something to think about, to be mindful about, and it's a bit of a ceremony, and it's a bit of when you have a beautiful tea and you make it carefully, especially if you get all involved in collecting teaware and stuff like that. I mean, you should see my cupboards, they're just chock-a-block full. But setting out the teaware, making the tea, choosing the teaware you're going to have with it is a lovely, inclusive experience and makes you feel really good. And it's something that you can share with people as well. It's something that you can enjoy on your own and just appreciate that little moment. Take the time to think, do, enjoy, and savor the taste of it. And especially if you're going to use the leaves again, you can use them several times, each time more flavors, different flavors, and it's an experience that you can really get involved in. And then obviously sharing it with others and pairing it with food and tea and cheese and tea and cake. Well, we know tea and cake works, but you can get really involved in pairing it. Tea is great with food. It's great as a dinner alternative, like your meal, very good for the digestion. And it goes really well. And different teas, you'll find if you start experimenting, different teas go well with different foods. Again, shoot me a line if you're looking for something that you really want to have tea with, and I'll make a suggestion. And yeah, I mean, explore, try. That there's so much in this wonderful world of tea that you can explore. I know that's been really crammed, and we've put a lot of information into just about half an hour. So I'll let you digest that. And if there are any questions, please just pop them in the comments, pop them in the comments after the video, and I'll keep an eye on it over the next few days and come back with any answers. And you can reach me through social media or on the website, and with questions or things you'd like to know if there's more. I mean, I can talk about tea for days, so anything you need, just give me a shout. If there are any immediate questions now, please just pop them in the comments. And in the meantime, I'm going to stick a couple of links up for you. So this is for the my tea club. So what to do if you're interested in tea and you're interested in discovering a bit more, pop over there. There's a little form just so I can get an understanding of your tea drinking habits, and then I can help you when teas come in. I can give you advice on what to buy and what's good and etc. One thing I realized we haven't touched on, so we'll just quickly say a couple of words about it, is caffeine. So I know for some people drinking tea, especially in the evening, if you get home late, you don't necessarily want something that's highly caffeinated. So tea does have caffeine. It behaves in the body in a different way to coffee. Coffee sends you up on a high. and drops you off unceremoniously about half an hour later. Tea takes 20 minutes to release into the bloodstream, then it releases over several hours, 3 to 6 hours. And again, everybody's system is different. Some people are really affected by caffeine, some people less so. If you don't want caffeine, or you want to reduce your caffeine in the evenings, there are some teas that are naturally low in caffeine. So things like Japanese hojicha, which is a roasted green tea, has a lovely nutty taste. It's a great kind of evening drink, and that is naturally low in caffeine. Brewing cold brew will be lower in caffeine as well, because you need the heat to actually release the caffeine from the leaves. Other things you can go for are herbals and tisanes. So tisane or tisane, it's your chamomile, your herbal blends, peppermint, etc. Those are caffeine free, but we kind of separate them out, because when we talk about tea, we're actually talking about things that come from the tea plant. So it is a different thing, but there's loads of great herbal and stuff on the side. In terms of which teas are more caffeinated, studies show that green teas and white teas actually have higher levels of caffeine than black tea. So it's got nothing to do with the color and the strength of the liquor. It's to do with actually how the leaf is processed and picked. But that's another it's another whole half an hour there, so we'll leave that. But hopefully that just gives you a little bit of clarity on that point, because I know it's something people always ask about. The other link I'm just going to give you is for matcha. So I did a blog post with tips for preparing matcha, so this will be useful to you. And I do have a blog post prepared, so I'll put it out shortly, and send it to Laura so that she can make sure that the group gets it. And that is for making cold brew tea. So just a little bit more detail, and actually the step-by-step kind of tips and guide for making cold brew tea that we were talking about earlier. Okay, are there any further questions or comments, or something you wondered about but not sure and would like to ask? Just pop it in the question box. Okay. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Hopefully that's helped you and given you a little bit more of an understanding and an idea about tea. I hope one or two of you will try some tea champagne. It really is lovely, and it's got that effect that you want, but without obviously the alcohol. And it's so easy to make. Try cold brew tea. I know we're going into winter, so it's maybe not the time for cold brew teas, but they can still be very enjoyable to drink, and it's a nice alternative to other drinks, soft drinks or alcohol. It's a nice kind of, it has flavor, it's refreshing, it's a nice thing to have in the fridge, and also great if people come around. It's something to serve that's different, that people haven't had before, and will always interest people. So do have a think about that. Matcha is fantastic because it's so packed full of antioxidants. It's so good for you, but it's also the process of making it and preparing it is a lovely kind of little still moment that you can get involved in, and it's a great stimulant. It's a great kind of alternative thing to get your day going. I start every day with a bowl of matcha. I know Laura does as well. So yeah, and if you need help with it, I know it's a big topic to get into, just ping me a line, and happy to give you advice on that. So yeah, any questions, shoot them over, pop them in the comments box later. I'll keep an eye on the video when it goes onto the group. And yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to listen, and I hope I'll be back again with something else. If there's a particular area you're interested in, let Laura know and we'll do another one. Cheers, good evening.